There's financial records that show that she's paid $600,000 directly by a CIA outlet. And the Iranian government has already accused her of being a CIA agent. And so this whole story about Mahsa Amini dying to morality police, it all starts from one reporter.
So this is a kind of a Western revenge for killing a CIA agent?
No. What I'm trying to say is that this CIA reporter, who's very notorious in Iran and in the Middle East for wanting to establish regime change for years against Iran, has now jumped on the bandwagon. Well, actually, not jumped on it, initiated this bandwagon that somehow she died by morality police.
Hello. Oh, you know me? Hi.
You debate very well.
Oh, yeah. You know who I
What are
is?
you talking about today? I'm a philosophy minor.
Oh, you are great. Got some interesting claims here today to play a critical thinking game. Have y'all done this format yet? No, not yet.
No.
Want to do it for like 5 minutes?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, let's do it. We could pick a topic, or
Yeah, pick a topic there.
is there any more topics, or do you think?
It could be anything, really. Whatever you want to do.
Set our stuff down real quick?
Yeah, go ahead.
Set our stuff up.
You can set it over there if you want.
What were we talking about?
We have several choices and suggestions, and you can bring anything you like.
He is the rebirth of Socrates.
The rebirth of Socrates. Oh my.
The poison didn't do it.
Alrighty, let's start on the neutral line. And want to bring your own claim or want to use one of these? This is a question to generate a claim.
We can have our own claim.
You can if you want. Anything you've been wondering about? Anything people have been saying that, oh, that's definitely not true, or definitely, yeah, I agree with that wholeheartedly. What do you think?
What topics do you specifically want to talk about, or like you're more interested in, or just anything?
I like the more contentious ones that people are arguing about.
Oh, like right now?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. What do you think about the most recent Iran protest? Have you
That's a
heard
good
about it?
one. Something like women in Iran should not have to wear the hijab. Is that the main contention that's happening?
I would say that's the main contention, like in appearance. And what I mean by that, it's like that's the narrative that they point out, like in the mainstream media. But that's not really the narrative. That's not really the reality of Iran, I would say.
There's a potential different cause for that protest.
Yeah, I would say it's actually more so there is a regime change policy within the United States and the West that are pushing a goal to somehow convince certain populations around the world and within Iran to be like, well, we need to change this country and make sure that it's a pro-women government. But at the end of the day, the United States doesn't really care for women or women rights overall. They did the same thing with Afghanistan. There for 20 years, and
Okay. I'm hearing the claim there's a cover story for a regime change.
yeah, there's a
in
cover
Iran.
story of the main woman that was Mahsa Amini.
Yeah.
And they allegedly, the allegations pointed out against the Iranian morality police is that she was somehow executed through bashings in the head, but the CT scans came in and they show that she suffered some form of like neurological issues.
Are you saying she was assassinated by a foreign government?
No, I'm more so speculating that she already had issues beforehand. She had medical issues beforehand, and the CCTV footage showed that she had collapsed because she had chemical imbalances within her body. And all the allegations pointing out that she had bashes in the head, the autopsy doesn't prove that.
What do you believe caused her death? And why did she die?
So she had a cardiovascular surgery, and I believe multiple other surgeries up to within her head, and those things, came in with long-term effects, obviously, because the CCTV footage shows that when she came into the Iranian police station, she was brought in because there was a claim that she was not properly dressed within the code of Iran's like public policy as to how women should dress. And then she was brought into the police station. She was going to be questioned. Her family was there, her sister and her mother, and at some point, the video is on YouTube and it's on Twitter and it's all over the internet. And then it shows that she's walking in, she speaks to someone, and she collapses on the floor, like she loses out her breath.
Okay.
And after that, the ambulances come in. The CCTV footage showed that from when she entered out of the police station to the ambulance, no police officer over there actually bashed her. They were very gentle. I mean, she was already collapsed. She was
So you're saying there was nothing nefarious going on with her death?
No.
There's
It was a genuine, actual like medical issue that caused her death.
completely natural, nothing nefarious going on.
Completely natural death, natural cause death. But the media is writing on it as if it's nefarious assassination of a woman because she didn't oblige herself to the public policy of how
Okay.
women should dress.
What do you think?
Yeah, to add on his points, the autopsy was revealed for her, and it showed no outside blunt force trauma. So
Okay.
it's just an addition.
And that relates to the cover story hypothesis for why there's a protest? That is the main impetus for the protests,
Yeah.
some people say.
So the protest started I believe it was about 3 weeks ago, and it all started about her. And more so specifically, I forget her name, but she is a Iranian
Yeah.
reporter that works in Washington, D.C. I completely, my brain is not working right now, but she's a very infamous Iranian reporter, and she directly works for the governing board of, it's called BGC, and it's a governing board where basically it's this multinational corporation. It's a media outlet, and the way that they operate is that they tell other media like outlets like BBC, CNN, all that other stuff to like put out predisposed narratives. And so the first four tweets that she talked about within the events related to Mahsa Amini is that first she said that she died of like a heart attack, or at least it seemed like a collapse. And then she alleged that morality police bashed her to the head. And she alleged that the autopsy reports come out and prove that, which the autopsy didn't come in. And I mean, I have a whole list of like screenshots of that, and the timelines of that she posted those tweets. But essentially, there is financial records that show that she's paid $600,000 directly by a CIA outlet. And the Iranian government has already accused her of being a CIA agent. And so this whole story about Mahsa Amini dying to morality police, it all starts from one reporter.
So this is a kind of a Western revenge for killing a CIA agent?
No. What I'm trying to say is that this CIA reporter, who's very notorious in Iran and in the Middle East for wanting to establish regime change for years against Iran, has now jumped on the bandwagon. Well, actually, not jumped on it, initiated this bandwagon that somehow she died by morality police.
Is it like a martyrdom type thing on her behalf?
No, it's more so that she came from Iran. She came here to the States, and now she works for the State Department and the CIA.
And she's dead, right?
And no, she's still alive. This reporter's still alive.
Oh, she's still alive.
Yeah.
So there's no death? It was just a potential beating?
No. I'm trying to say that the woman, Mahsa Amini, in Iran, she did die. The reporter, the CIA agent I'm talking about, is a separate person. And this person is the CIA agent that I'm talking about in question that initiated the narrative that she was,
This Western reporter manufactured this crisis.
Yeah, she
for the
manufactured
purpose-
this narrative that somehow she died by morality police with bashings to the head.
Using the death of someone who just died of natural causes.
Right. Using the death of someone who said that she didn't die of natural causes to initiate regime change. And now we're witnessing regime change protests at UCLA. We're now witnessing riots all over in Iran. police are cracking down on it, and because of this one person who does directly work for the CIA, has initiated a regime change narrative that's become really popular and now is formed into protest for the last 3 weeks. And
Finish it. And if this is true, which the evidence points that it is, this goes against completely objective, ethical, moral, permissible actions of especially Kant, Immanuel Kant, saying that humans are not meant to be used as means to an end. Humans are ends themselves. And here, what my colleague has said is that the West has used Amini as a means to an end of Western narrative.
And a regime change of Iran using the death of someone. Are you saying the West didn't kill her, she just died, and we're now using her as a means?
yeah, she died of a natural death, and now the West is using her as a martyrdom, pretending that they care for women, when the most obvious example of this is Afghanistan.
Yeah. What is the goal of the West and for Iran?
The goal of the West is Iran is the regional superpower of the Middle East, and they are between what I would call the satanic West versus the humanitarian East, or the humanitarian Middle East. And what I mean by this is that Iran is the only country in the Middle East that protects itself and the forces of the West from the West. When you look at the foreign policy of the United States and Israel today, and how they have specifically targeted Assad in Syria, how they overthrew Gaddafi in Libya, how they recently just lost the war in Afghanistan to the Taliban, to now, thankfully, thank God, the Afghanistans can finally have control of their own country. And Westerners may not view it as perfect, but it's their damn country. They can do whatever they want to it, and that's what I can respect. And leading on to this point is that Iran is the only regional superpower that is willing to protect other countries and itself. That's why they always keep talking about this narrative, like if Iran were to get nuclear weapons, this would be the end of Israel. This would be the end of the West. We know that this is simply not true. Nuclear weapons are a form of defense. It's detente. It's to prevent aggression. And the only reason why the United States banned Japan is because Japan couldn't bomb the United States back. They didn't have atomic bombs at the time. And we know that the only country in this world that has used atomic or nuclear weapons is the United States, and they don't
Against civilian populations.
against populations against countries that they know that they can't force their hand, that they can't make them agree that we can exploit you, we can take your oil, we can puppet your government. And so Iran is the only country in that region that protects itself and is willing to die for its region. It's willing to die for itself. It's a 5,000-year-old civilization.
And the West wants to reduce the power of Iran to be able to do that?
The West wants to not only reduce it wants to humiliate Iran. When we look at the history of Iran from the Shah of Iran, when they completely exploited the natural resource of Iran, which was their oil lands. And all that went directly to the British and to the United States, and where they received all the profits, but Iran didn't receive anything. They were a really backwards nation. They couldn't industrialize. They had not the basic needs or the basic infrastructure and developments that the West had. And Iran is just saying, after the 79 Islamic Revolution, is like, is it okay if I use language?
Sure.
Iran's just basically saying, fuck you, fuck that. We are our own country. We want to establish our own needs and desires. We want to establish our own public affairs and politics and the way we govern our finance and economies. We don't want to be puppeted. We don't want to be threatened by Israel. We don't want to be threatened by the West. And that's essentially the dichotomy that we have.
Kind of a new claim.
Yeah, I'm wondering which claim we should focus on. There's a lot here. There's the hijab conflict cover story for regime change, or the West wants to humiliate Iran, or maybe something else we can focus on as a claim. What's the best thing to focus on?
I would say the primary, it's the West wants a regime change in Iran. And that regime change could lead to multiple outcomes, which is,
the West is currently initiating a regime change in Iran?
They're attempting to with the color revolution in Iran. And what I mean by color revolution is that it's a fake revolution. It's not actually a revolution supported by the majority of Iranians.
Manufactured.
Yeah, it's a manufactured.
Fake.
I mean, this is a playbook based off the CIA. They've been doing this for years.
Okay, let's make the claim the West is currently attempting to initiate a color revolution in Iran.
I would say that the West is currently in the works of trying to. I would say that the West has successfully initiated a color revolution. I'm saying that color revolution will not be successful.
They've currently initiated one, but it's not going to succeed.
Yeah, it's been in the works for the last 3 weeks.
Gotcha. If that's the claim, and these are our degrees of agreement on that claim, and say it one more time, the claim.
The West wants to initiate regime. What they want to regime change Iran to puppet them.
It's currently.
Currently
is regime change and color revolution the same thing?
Yes.
Okay,
It's a
so
method of
is regime change the right way to say it?
Yes, and actually the end goal is regime change.
Yeah. The West is initiating a regime change through a color revolution in Iran.
Sure, yeah.
Which carpet are you at?
Strongly agree.
You strongly agree? Where are you? Strongly agree. All right. And I think I'm hearing a lot of reasons. And I think the main reason I'm hearing is this Western journalist used the death of what was her name?
Masa Amini?
Masa Amini.
Yeah, Masa Amini.
To initiate a protest over the treatment of women.
Yeah, treatment of women in Iran.
To do what? Just to create some kind of social unrest, and that helps out.
Yes, this is one of the main strategies of the CIA that they initiate. If they can't establish direct coups or some form of a military invasion of the country or a political coup, they will. One of their last resorts is to initiate a social unrest and protest.
Can you give me the main dominoes in that chain from protest to, and what does regime change mean?
So, at least I mostly study, Latin American geopolitics, and this is prevalent in almost every single Latin American country, but if they can't if they can't successfully convince a certain sect of the elite to initiate some form of political coup or military crackdown on the current government that opposes the United States, what they will do is that they will use social media, use the universities and people who are mostly affiliated with the outside world of that said country, let's say in this instance Iran, and they will try to forge some form of narrative that they know that is pretty sentimental or that they know that might strike some hearts and be like, well, these are the things that we know that you rightfully critique of your government. Let us foreigners or let us foreign governments help you out initiate that. And so what that'll look like is a bunch of protests will start up. In most countries, particularly in the West, you can't have protests unless you somehow negotiate with your local government or representative that you're planning out this protest, et cetera, et cetera. And they start pouring out lies as to how the regime, or in this instance Iran, or the government will react to these protests. And so be like, well, now this is what happened in another province. They attacked you, even though most of that in this case is a lie. It would probably haven't happened without defensive measures. And they base off all these actions on sentiment, on emotions, and just by ear information. And so they'll try to create as much havoc as possible through these protests to finally initiate and get subversive revolutionary groups to try to initiate some form of grand scale protest against the main government.
And that leads to elections, or what?
I'm sorry?
Does that lead to an election or some kind of governmental
It could.
change?
It definitely could. The thing is that this isn't the first color revolution that Iran has went through. The last one was after the assassination of Soleimani General Soleimani, which was one of the most famous Iranian generals that defeated ISIS in the Middle East, and ISIS wouldn't have been defeated without General Soleimani. But after he was assassinated, protests started up again. Other ways that they can use these protesters is they will fund indirectly or directly or somehow communicate with them, these subversive groups, to somehow get in connections with on-the-ground terrorist groups. And one of the many things that is fascinating about this color revolution in Iran is that Iran has been arresting terrorist groups and terrorist cells that have affiliated with these revolutionary groups. And they know that they're very well-known terrorists because they already have them in the database, they've established attacks, they have connections of ISIS and Al-Qaeda and Al-Nusra. That's all the way back in Syria, and the Kurds. Well, not Kurds as a whole, but Kurdish terrorist groups. And so they'll use these terrorist groups to affiliate with students or, supposed color revolutionaries, people who are tricked into going against their government, and they'll try to create as much havoc as possible. There are already a bunch of videos that they're burning down ambulances. They are,
Okay.
They're burning down ambulances. They're setting fires to public government buildings. There was 2 videos I saw on Twitter, and no, not everything is like a lie or it's somehow faked. That where they forcibly were removing hijabs from women who, the law is already established. This is their culture. Many women in Iran do want to wear hijabs. You can ask any Muslim from any country. I'm not a Muslim, but I can understand and respect their perspective. Most of these people, that is their norm. For us, our norm is not wearing hijabs. For them, it is hijabs. And so they'll be forcibly removing these hijabs from the women, even though the women, want to wear the hijabs. And they have been caught beating them, slapping the hijab out their face in very violent ways. And these are supposedly revolutionaries.
These are CIA-related people?
So the thing about these color revolutionaries is that they're all not all of them are a monolith. Some of them could be tricked. They can actually believe that they're doing good thing. Good faith people. Others are already held resentments against the government, so they've been long-time affiliates of just being anti-Iran, anti their own government. Some could potentially be agents of themselves who are being propagated by connections through CIA or other intelligence services like Mossad, the Israeli intelligence service, and they can actually initiate. The most obvious example of this is when the BLM riots were occurring in 2020. A lot of people were catching a bunch of cops who were pretending to be regular civilians but were starting shit. They were starting riots, they were burning down buildings, and the BLM movement was like, well, we don't actually associate with these violent rioters. But then they found out that these were undercover cops. In the same way that this has happened in Iran, where there will be initiators, and they could be very well undercover cops or undercover agents. They may not be directly on the payroll of the CIA, but they could be just people who have connections with people within in the intelligence service. And it's a very convoluted, multifaceted,
Very complex.
very complex
I want to
thing
get
going on the ground.
anything else to add? Do you agree with those reasons, or anything else to add?
Yeah, I believe that the West uses, what did you say, like the cops, like
Undercover agents and initiators.
the West uses undercover agents. It's not just a spoof or like something you can't prove. My uncle just came from Ukraine, and he said that a lot of these videos you see of Russian war crimes against Ukraine are actually Ukrainian people doing it to their own people. And I wouldn't doubt that these people doing it to their own people, the Ukrainians, are part of the Western CIA. They're doing this and switching the narrative and making it seem like Russia did this.
Okay. So if we had some sincere people watching this video and they're on the neutral line, they're not sure where to go, how could we process this kind of claim and just think through this?
Yeah.
What is the best evidence for this kind of claim? How can we get this evidence? How can we be sure this evidence actually implies this claim? What is the best kind of evidence for this kind of
Like
claim?
the most general.
Yeah.
I would say the best evidence is to understand. I mean, I wish there was an easier answer to this, but there's really not. The best evidence to support all these claims is that you have to understand the U.S.-Iranian relations. You have to understand how the West uses the most deceptive tactics to portray as themselves as the white saviors of the world, when really it is the complete opposite. Nothing could be further the truth. You have to understand how U.S. media works and how there are material interest in wanting to puppet or wanting to take over Iran. And
Is this like money in people's bank accounts transferred from people with specific interests? If we had that information?
yeah, one of the many things is that there are multiple elites out there, particularly within big oil, within Western companies that are just very interested to want to puppet Iran because they have one of the largest oil reserves in the entire region, along with Saudi Arabia. But in this case, Saudi Arabia is under their breath. Saudi Arabia does whatever the United States wants them to do. But Iran completely rejects to be a nation subversive to the United States. And so, to prove all these claims, you have to really deeply understand the motivations between Iran and between the West, which is the West, you have to always be skeptical. I'm not saying to not be skeptical of Iran, but in the case of oppressor meets oppressed, you're going to have to be more cynical against the oppressor.
Be more cynical against the oppressor.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Which in this case is the West.
The West. Okay. I don't know where to go here. If someone else was on the strongly disagree, what would you expect them to say as their main reason? What do you think?
No, I just said.
We know someone like that.
What do they say?
If someone's on the strong disagree, I have had some arguments, some debates, and just like some lighthearted conversations on this topic. If someone is on the strong disagree, most of them are good faith people. Most of them are, they're generally good people. But I would say either they're uninformed, which is the majority of people in the world, or they're misinformed, which is the people who are actually active trying to seek information. And the ones who I say that the misinformed is that
Well, what are their reasons?
They're-
even
they're-
if they are misinformed.
the reasons that they believe is that the bigger point I want to portray is that there is a issue when it comes to diaspora immigrants. I'm a son of an immigrant, and diaspora immigrants can have a really bad view of their own personal country that they left. Like, for example, that people who came from post-communist countries, and they may not have the most informative perspective on that post-communist country that they left. And so for the people who claim all these, I would say, false claims about Iran of how they interact with women and stuff, I would say that they're highly misinformed. And the reasons that they try to point out to me is that, well, you can't really trust the IRA, you can't trust the Iranian government, you can't trust. You have to look at the way that they treat women. They don't treat the same way that they do in the West. And to that, I would counter that as you can't forcibly enact one's specific culture onto someone else's civilization. You can't do so. You can't tell a Muslim person to be like, well, I can't allow you to believe in God even though we're a secular democracy here. But the thing is, we do have freedom of speech. We do have freedom of religion. Yeah.
So they would say Iran treats the people in Iran treat its women harshly, and that is a good enough explanation for thinking the women in that society would want to have a kind of change in their society?
Well,
That's what they would say?
well, what I would respond to that is that,
You don't have to respond to it. Just is that the main reason?
yeah, it would be the main reason, which is based on human rights and women's rights. And that's their main criticism of Iran, that if they can't engage with women the way that the West does, then we shouldn't treat them as a serious government. And this reason has actually been the exact same reason that we go against countries that we don't ever agree with. For example, in Afghanistan, we said that we had to stay there in Afghanistan for 20 years because of women's rights. And we have persecuted so many women and children in the last 20 years in Afghanistan to the point where it makes the Taliban look like angels compared to the U.S. military.
How about this question? Would the world be a better place if Iran was more Western?
No. No.
Why do you believe that?
I'm going to ask a rhetorical question back. Do you think the world would be a better place if the West was like China, based on your perceptions of China?
No.
So why would we apply that double standard to Iran?
Double standard?
Yeah, that somehow because we think that the West is superior in the way we treat our people, and the West is superior in the way we, somehow treat our workers and engage in international affairs, that somehow we can apply those same points onto another country.
So the assumption is potentially cultures should be able to be on, doing their own thing.
Culture is organic. You can't force culture to change. You can't force Muslims to be Christians. You can't force Christians to be atheists. I mean, you just can't. Otherwise, you're subjecting yourself to be a totalitarian at that point, and you're subjecting yourself to somehow be fascist-like. So in this case, Iran trying to become like the West is like telling a 5,000 year civilization to kill itself. Your history is gone. Become like us, the West, and whatever that means. The West, liberalism, capitalism. It means to be, all about consumption. Our economy is not really about production. It's all about consumption, social media, food, sex, pornography, all this junk, drugs. You can't tell that Iran, no, be like consumption. When they, on the other hand, are building bridges, they are building infrastructure. 70% of Iran's STEM program, their science and technology program, are women. They ban pornography. Prostitution is illegal. We somehow tell women here in the West that, freedom is sexual liberation, when vast majority of prostitutes are only in prostitution because they're poor and they need the money. It's all based on different sets of moral standards that I think we can't universalize. It's just different cultures.
All right. What about you? Anything else to add?
Yeah, I agree that the West wants to. The reason for this narrative is, one of the reasons of this narrative is that the West wants to eradicate traditionalism and to constantly modernize a neoliberal globalization of consumption at the cost of human health and brain levels and dopamine levels with pornography. Every time you watch pornography, it's a dopamine release. It changes the brain. It's not good for you. It's just bad. The West wants to enable that in Iran.
Okay. Anything else to think about for this claim? I still have probably a lot of questions, but we've gone pretty long. What do you want to wrap it up here? Anything else to Grant, any last words?
Yeah, no, I'm good.
Okay. Maybe if you see us again, we can pick it up with some related claim. This is really good, though. Tons of stuff there.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, thank you, guys. It was fun.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Don't believe everything the media portrays.
Right. All right. Well, thank you so much. Feel free to take a puzzle piece. They're a little
If you
stressful.
both want the same color, yeah, I'll grab another one if you both want the same color. Yeah.
Sweet. We'll get another red one there. All right. Reed.
Peter.
Nice to meet you. Peter Marty. Gotcha.
Yeah, I know Riley's been there 4 or 5 times,
Yeah.
and I'm just always upset because I'm never here when you're here. Are you always here at the spot, or like just around doing
We're gonna try to be here. I think we're like this.
We
spot.
like this spot.
Yeah, you got the shade,
It,
spacious.
it seems to be less intimidating than if we're out in front of the stage, but we still have enough traffic to
to get people.
You guys
Yeah.
are practicing stoic virtue right now.
Yeah.
Virtue in nature.
Thank you.
Nice, yeah.
I'm Dolly.
Dolly?
Yeah.
Nice to meet
Hey, Peter.
Varden.
Pardon.
you. And are you guys on schedule, or like?
We have a meetup for, it's called Street Epistemology Los Angeles on meetup.com.
Okay.
I have a YouTube channel. And yeah, this may end up there. Is that cool?
I do, but mine is tiny. It's so small the card to be like a little tiny postage stamp.
That's cool.
All right.
So are you guys here like every Wednesday?
We're trying to do Wednesdays
Okay.
from 11 to 3-ish, but life happens.
Right. So is it only every Wednesday, or is it?
For this location, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. We also do a lot of stuff online, so we're busy.
Right.
How long have you guys been here out here today?
Since 10:30.
Have you guys?
Yeah, we got set up at 11.
Have you guys had other people come on? And
Yeah.
What were their points?
We've had 2 of them on the subject of
No.
gender binary, moral facts exist. Somebody started with gender binary and then switched.
No, yeah. We've done no
and
hierarchy.
2 on no legitimacy. No hierarchies are legitimate.
Yeah. Done a few.
Nobody's brought one of their own yet.
Oh, okay. That's awesome.
Well, no, I guess you did, because yours wasn't on the list.
No, yeah.
Yeah, you brought your
That was the
own.
first one.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. I'm glad to have a conversation. I hope it was fun.
Yeah, thank you.
That's good. Nice. All right, have a great day.
All right. You too.
You bet.
Every Wednesday, right? Mostly?
Yep.
We're trying.